My name is Dr. Matthew Johnson. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist in the state of Oregon, and I have a private practice in Grants Pass. My wife lived in Alaska for 24 years. I lived there for 20 years. We'd been in the outdoors a lot, fishing, camping, hiking. I did some hunting. When we moved to Southern Oregon, we thought it'd be a neat idea to take the kids out to the Oregon Caves. So we came out here to go hike on the Big Tree Loop Trail, which is a 3.5-mile loop that goes up and around the mountain on top of the caves. One of the things that we talked about was it'll be nice to finally hike in a spot where there aren't any grizzly bears, because we just moved from Alaska and everywhere you go there's grizzly bears.
Well, after we'd hiked probably half hour, 45 minutes, we'd walked through an area that had a really strong smell. It seemed peculiar, but we just kept going. Then when we began hearing this noise, that bothered me. I wasn't sure what it was, and I kept going through my mind, what man-made thing might be making that.
We all stopped, and I said to my wife and my kids, "Did you guys hear that?" And they all went. It made a noise that was much more bass, mammal, and deeper than I could mimic, but it sounded like whoa, 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 whoa. We weren't scared. We were just very curious, trying to figure out what animal in Oregon makes this noise, because we've never heard anything like it in Alaska. We moved on up the mountain, and that's when we began to hear it paralleling us. When we would stop and listen, it was quiet. When we'd walk, then it would make noise.
Nothing I really was familiar with would answer the question of what was it? What were we hearing? And it did follow us. It seemed to be coming along the trail beside us.
After about 10 minutes of doing that, we didn't hear anything anymore. And the kids decided to take a little break from the hiking, and my wife was watching them, and we weren't hearing anything, smelling anything. I hiked up the hill from the trail about 30, 40 feet away from my wife and my kids to go to the bathroom. As I was up there behind the brush and the trees, which was functioning as a natural blind, I was scanning the trees from my right to my left, and as I was looking, I saw something move out of the left corner of my eye down the hill. So I turned my head and I looked, and that's when I saw something walk from behind one tree, 1001, 1002, over to another very large tree, and then it looked out from behind that tree over at my wife and children on the path. I have experience with black bear and grizzly bear in Alaska, and I know what a bear looks like, I know what it sounds like, I know how it walks. Immediately, I knew this was not a bear. This thing was taller than a basketball player, more buff than a football player. It had to have been at least 9 feet tall. And I'm almost 7 feet tall, and it made me look small. Everything I knew came crashing down. My whole concept, my whole cognitive schema of what the outdoors consist of just was shattered. This animal's myth and legend, and it's so huge. It's frightening when you're not prepared to see it. And all I could think of at that moment is my wife and my kids are down there. And I just had to get down there and get them out of there as fast as I could. That's all I knew. It's just, what in the world is this? So once I got my wits about me, I had this protective instinct kick in and ran down to the trail. I avoided eye contact because the only thing I had to go on was what I knew about grizzly bear in Alaska, and that was you avoid eye contact or else they'll take it as a challenge. I ran up to my wife and kids and said, "Let's go, move," and they're kind of like dilly-dallying around. "Go, move now."
When Matt came down out of the trees, he seemed to be really rushing us, which was not real typical. that was a little troublesome.
I still tried to give the appearance of remaining calm.
He pulled me aside while the kids were getting a drink. He said, "You're not going to believe what I just saw." He said, "I just saw Bigfoot." And I said, "I believe you." Everything that we've been hearing and smelling sort of added up to something, and it made sense to me.
I said that you take the kids up ahead of me for about 75 feet and I'll follow you from behind. And if anything comes up from behind or from the side, I'll run interference.
We just kept looking over our shoulder, and every little thing we heard, we were afraid that it was, still following us.
If I would have tried to run interference with what I saw, there wouldn't have been a whole lot of interference. It was big. I had never been so scared in my life, and that was a very long hour until we got off the mountain. Before my family's encounter, I knew very little about Bigfoot. Matter of fact, I would have labeled myself a skeptic. You'd be surprised at how many people actually do believe, but just aren't willing to talk about it. Since my family's encounter, I've been contacted by a lot of people. I've had over 30 reports made to me that span back 30 years, right around this park area alone. I've been contacted by state troopers, by a judge, by accountants, by attorneys, by teachers, by avid hunters who've had their own encounters but refuse to go public. I'm just trying to do my part in proving that this animal exists and get it protected. Enough of us got together to form the Southern Oregon Bigfoot Society, and we decided to research an area where an encounter was reported. We've made a lot of progress in 2 short years. We found lots of tracks. We found a bedding area where 3 Bigfoot slept, and we've had 2 visuals when we've been out there as well. And they've screamed at us at night and they've growled at us. When I run into a skeptic, I just say, "Hey, I was where you were at until we had our encounter." Skeptics are going to be skeptics until they get the proof they need. I can live with that. We're confident that we're going to get to a point when we turn over all the evidence to the media, it will be indisputable and there will not be any controversy that goes along with it. I think the public at large is having difficulty accepting the existence of Bigfoot in spite of the evidence because most people hardly ever go out into the wilderness. When they camp in parks, and cougar and bear scare those people. Now when you throw in a 9-foot hairy primate, they can't handle that. Are there days when I wish I hadn't seen Bigfoot? Yes. Are there days where I wish I wouldn't keep finding tracks? Yeah. But when you keep going out there and you hear him growling at you and you hear him screaming at you and you find the tracks in the ground, you know it's just a matter of time before we get it on videotape. And we're going to do that.
While these tales surface from time to time, there has been no official verification or undisputed physical evidence that Bigfoot really exists. Until there is, Bigfoot will remain more myth than fact. Coming up next, a